The fluorescent lights hummed quietly in the empty halls of Shaw and Mitchell investment firm as Marie Thompson pushed her cleaning cart down the marble corridor. At 52 years old, her salt and pepper hair was neatly tied back, and despite the late hour, her dark brown eyes remained alert and observant. She wore the standard issue blue uniform of Capital Cleaning Services, the company supposedly employing her, though few knew the truth behind her presence there. Every night at 9 p.m., Marie would arrive through the service entrance, sign in with security, and begin her rounds on the 32nd floor, home to the executive offices. The security guards had grown used to her warm smile and gentle good evening as she passed through. To them, she was just another cleaning lady, invisible like the rest of the nighttime maintenance staff. But Marie Thompson was far from ordinary. Hidden beneath her humble appearance was a woman who held an MBA from Harvard Business School and had spent 15 years as a successful corporate consultant. More importantly, she was the daughter of James Thompson, the recently deceased silent partner who had helped found Shaw and Mitchell 30 years ago. What the CEO and other executives didn't know was that James Thompson had left his 51% controlling stake in the company to his only daughter. Instead of immediately claiming her position, Marie had devised a plan to understand the true nature of the company's culture and its leadership from the ground up. The best way to know a company's heart is to see how they treat those they think don't matter, her father had always said. Those words had stuck with Marie, leading her to this unconventional approach. On this particular Tuesday night, Marie methodically worked her way through the executive floor. She emptied waste paper baskets, wiped down desks, and vacuumed carpets while keeping her ears open and her eyes alert. The executives might have gone home, but their computers often remained on, their documents sometimes left in plain sight, and their conversations occasionally continued late into the evening. As she approached the conference room, she heard voices. The light was still on, and through the gap in the door, she could see several junior executives who had stayed late for a project. "Did you see that cleaning lady's face when I dropped my coffee earlier?" a male voice said, followed by laughter. Like she'd never seen a mess before. Isn't that literally her job? Marie's hand paused on her cart, her fingers tightening slightly around the handle. "Oh, you mean the old black lady?" Another voice chimed in. "She's always skulking around here at night, probably hoping to steal something valuable." More laughter followed, making Marie's stomach turn, but instead of anger, she felt a deep sadness mixed with determination. These were the very attitudes her father had warned her about, the rot that could destroy a company from within. Quietly, Marie pulled out her phone and pressed record, letting their conversation continue. This wasn't the first time she'd documented such behavior, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. In her 3 months of working as a cleaner, she collected dozens of similar incidents. What these young executives didn't realize was that their cruel jokes were being lobbed into a detailed report that would eventually make its way to the board of directors. Marie had already identified numerous instances of discrimination, harassment, and even financial impropriety throughout the company. As she continued her cleaning duties, Marie thought about her father. James Thompson had built this company from nothing, working alongside his partners to create what should have been a legacy of integrity and excellence. Instead, under the current CEO's leadership, it had become a breeding ground for prejudice and corruption. Marie glanced at her watch. 10:30 p.m. She still had several hours left in her shift, more offices to clean, and more observations to make. With practiced ease, she adjusted her cleaning cart and moved on to the next section of offices, leaving the laughing executives behind. Little did they know that the woman they mockingly called the cleaning lady would soon become their worst nightmare. But for now, Marie Thompson continued her work, invisible but watching, silent but recording, seemingly powerless but holding all the cards. In her pocket, her phone continued to record their discriminatory comments, adding another piece of evidence to her growing collection. Soon, very soon, she would reveal her true identity. But not yet. There was still more to learn, more to document, and more to understand about just how deep the problems at Shaw and Mitchell really went. The next morning, while most of the cleaning staff headed home, Marie Thompson made her way to a small coffee shop 3 blocks from Shaw and Mitchell. She ordered her usual black coffee and settled into a corner booth, pulling out a worn leather notebook. Inside were detailed notes from her nightly observations, each page filled with times, dates, and conversations she had witnessed. Today marked her discovery of something far more serious than the usual discrimination she'd been documenting. Last night, after the mocking executives had finally left, Marie had been cleaning CEO Richard Bennett's office when his computer monitor caught her attention. He had forgotten to lock his screen before leaving, and a series of emails were clearly visible. Marie's hands trembled slightly as she wrote down what she remembered. The emails showed clear evidence of insider trading. Bennett had been leaking confidential information to select clients, helping them make millions while smaller investors lost their savings. It was exactly the kind of corruption her father had suspected but could never prove. As she wrote, a shadow fell across her table. Marie looked up to find Sandra Chen, one of the few senior managers at Shaw and Mitchell who was a person of color. Marie recognized her from her night shifts, having seen Sandra working late many times. "You're the night cleaning lady, aren't you?" Sandra asked, keeping her voice low. "I've seen you around the office." Marie hesitated for a moment before nodding. Something in Sandra's expression told her this wasn't a casual conversation. "I know who you really are, Miss Thompson," Sandra continued, sliding into the booth across from her. "I worked closely with your father for years. He told me about you before he passed." Marie's careful facade cracked slightly. After 3 months of maintaining her cover, being recognized felt both frightening and relieving. "How many others know?" Marie asked, her professional voice replacing her usual careful cleaning lady tone. "Just me," Sandra replied. "Your father trusted me because I've been keeping my own records of the discrimination and corruption under Bennett's leadership. But I never had enough power to do anything about it." Marie studied Sandra's face, seeing the same determination she felt reflected in the other woman's eyes. After a moment, she made a decision and opened her notebook. "Let me show you what I found last night," Mary said, turning the pages to her latest entry. For the next hour, the two women compared notes. Sandra's position as senior manager had given her access to information that complemented Marie's ground-level observations. Together, they painted a damning picture of the company's leadership. "Bennett has a board meeting scheduled for next week," Sandra mentioned. "He's planning to push through some major policy changes that would make it even harder for minority employees to advance." Marie's jaw tightened. "You won't get the chance," she said firmly. "I think it's time to speed up my timeline." She pulled out her phone and played one of the recordings from the previous night. The young executives mocking her, unaware that their cruel jokes were being preserved as evidence. "This is just a small sample," Marie explained. "I have dozens more recordings, documents, and photographs. With your inside knowledge added to mine, we have everything we need to take action." Sandra leaned forward, her expression serious. "What's your plan?" "Bennett and his inner circle think they're untouchable because they believe they know everyone who holds power in the company," Mary said, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Their biggest mistake was assuming that the cleaning lady they mock every night couldn't possibly be important." As the morning crowd bustled around them, Marie and Sandra began plotting the details of what would become one of the most dramatic corporate takedowns in recent memory. They knew the next few days would require careful planning and perfect timing. Before they parted ways, Sandra paused. "Your father would be proud of what you're doing," she said softly. Marie nodded, gathering her notebook. "He always said that true leadership isn't about having power, it's about using that power to make things right." That night, when Marie returned to her cleaning duties, she moved through the offices with renewed purpose. The end of her masquerade was approaching, and soon, those who had looked down on her would learn just how costly their prejudice would be. Over the next 3 days, Marie Thompson and Sandra Chen worked carefully to prepare their case against CEO Richard Bennett and his executive team. While Marie continued her nightly cleaning routine, Sandra used her position as senior manager to gather additional documentation during the day. On Thursday night, Marie was cleaning near the executive conference room when she overheard Bennett and his CFO, Michael Rogers, discussing their latest scheme. The door was slightly ajar, and their voices carried clearly into the hallway. "The minority recruitment program is costing us too much," Bennett said, his voice filled with irritation. "Find a way to cut it without making it obvious. We don't need any discrimination lawsuits." "Already working on it," Rogers replied. "We'll just make the requirements so strict that hardly anyone will qualify. On paper, they'll look perfectly legal." Marie silently pulled out her phone and recorded their conversation. As she listened, She thought about all the qualified candidates who would be denied opportunities because of their race. It was exactly the kind of systematic discrimination her father had fought against his entire career. Later that night, Marie met Sandra in the empty parking garage. They sat in Sandra's car, reviewing the evidence they'd collected. "Look at this," Sandra said, pulling out a stack of papers. "I found proof that Bennett rejected 3 highly qualified minority candidates for senior positions last month. He hired his golf buddies instead, all of them less qualified." Marie nodded, adding the papers to their growing file. "And here's something interesting," she said, playing the recording from earlier. "They're actively planning to dismantle the diversity initiatives." As they organized their evidence, Marie's phone buzzed. It was a message from Jerome Williams, one of the independent board members she had secretly contacted. He had agreed to meet them the following morning before office hours. At 7 a.m. the next day, Marie arrived at a private conference room in a nearby hotel. This time, she wasn't wearing her cleaning uniform. Instead, she was dressed in a perfectly tailored business suit, her hair styled professionally, and her bearing that of a confident executive. Jerome Williams was already waiting when she and Sandra arrived. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized Marie from her father's photographs. "Miss Thompson," he said, standing to greet her. "I must admit, when you first contacted me, I was skeptical, but now I understand why you chose this approach." For the next 2 hours, Marie and Sandra presented their evidence. They showed Williams the recordings, the financial documents proving mismanagement, the discriminatory hiring practices, and the planned dismantling of diversity programs. "This is damning," Williams said, reviewing the files. "And you gathered all of this while working as a cleaning lady?" "People say a lot of things when they think no one important is listening," Marie replied, "but there's more. Show him the emails, Sandra." Sandra pulled out the copies of Bennett's insider trading emails. Williams's face grew serious as he read them. "This is criminal," he said quietly. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" Marie shook her head. "You're the first board member we've approached. We need your help to call an emergency board meeting." Williams looked thoughtful. "Bennett has 5 board members in his pocket, but if we can convince the other 4 independent directors, combined with your controlling share, we can remove him immediately," Marie finished. "And we have more than enough evidence to justify it." They spent another hour planning their next steps. Williams agreed to quietly contact the other independent board members while keeping Marie's identity secret. They would schedule the emergency meeting for Monday morning, when Bennett least expected it. As they prepared to leave, Williams touched Marie's arm. "Your father and I were friends for 30 years, he said. "You would be amazed at how thoroughly you've documented everything. Bennett won't know what hit him." Marie smiled, thinking of her father. "He taught me that patience and observation are more powerful than brute force." Bennett's arrogance and prejudice blinded him to the truth right in front of him. That night, as Marie pushed her cleaning cart through the executive floor one last time, she felt a sense of calm purpose. In 3 days, everything would change. The executives who mocked her, who saw her as nothing more than the help, would learn that their judgment and cruelty had sealed their own fate. Over the weekend, Marie meticulously prepared for Monday's confrontation. She spent Saturday meeting individually with each independent board member that Jerome Williams had contacted. Each meeting took place in different locations around the city to avoid drawing attention. In a quiet corner of the public library, board member Patricia Chen reviewed the evidence with growing anger. "I always suspected something was wrong," she said, "but this goes beyond anything I imagined." At a small diner across town, David Martinez, another board member, studied the financial records Sandra had collected. His face darkened as he examined the numbers. "They've been cooking the books," he muttered. "This isn't just discrimination, it's fraud." The most dramatic meeting came on Sunday afternoon when Marie met with Eleanor Hughes, the longest-serving board member and a close friend of her father's. They met in Eleanor's home office, where family photos lined the walls. Among them was a picture of Eleanor with Marie's father from 20 years ago. "James would be furious if he could see what Bennett has done to this company," Eleanor said, her voice tight with emotion. "We trusted Bennett to maintain your father's values of integrity and equality. Instead, he's corrupted everything." Marie pulled out one final piece of evidence, a letter her father had written before his death, expressing his concerns about Bennett's leadership and his hopes that Marie would one day help set things right. Tomorrow morning, Marie explained to Eleanor, I'll arrive at the office before anyone else. Sandra will help me set up in the main conference room. When Bennett arrives for what he thinks is a routine board meeting, you'll find the cleaning lady sitting at the head of the table. Eleanor finished, a smile spreading across her face. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world. That evening, Marie returned to her apartment and opened her closet. Pushing past her cleaning uniforms, she reached for a garment bag she hadn't touched in months. Inside was a precisely tailored black suit, her armor for tomorrow's battle. As she laid out her clothes for the morning, her phone buzzed with a message from Sandra. Everything's ready. Security has been briefed about tomorrow's changes. They're on our side. Marie smiled, remembering how the security guards had always treated her with kindness during her late-night shifts. They, too, had seen Bennett's true nature. She spent the next few hours reviewing her presentation one last time. The evidence was organized into clear, undeniable proof of Bennett's misconduct. The financial records, the discriminatory hiring practices, the insider trading, everything was documented and ready. Just before midnight, Marie received another message, this time from Jerome Williams. All independent board members confirmed for 9 a.m. Bennett's supporters can't block the vote. It's going to work. Marie walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. For 3 months, she had lived a double life, enduring humiliation and prejudice while building her case. Tomorrow, it would all pay off. She thought about the young executives who had mocked her, the cleaning lady they saw as beneath their notice. She thought about all the qualified candidates who had been denied opportunities because of their race. She thought about her father's legacy, nearly destroyed by Bennett's greed and prejudice. Time for a change, she whispered to herself. Early the next morning, Marie arrived at Shaw and Mitchell wearing her suit instead of her cleaning uniform. Sandra met her in the lobby, holding 2 cups of coffee. The conference room is ready, Sandra reported. We've replaced Bennett's usual chair with one that's slightly lower than the others. A small detail, but it will throw him off balance, Marie finished. Perfect. They rode the elevator to the executive floor. The same floor Marie had cleaned countless times, picking up scattered papers and empty coffee cups left by careless executives. Now she walked down the corridor with purpose, her heels clicking against the marble floors. As they entered the conference room, Marie took her place at the head of the table. In front of her was a stack of folders, one for each board member, containing the evidence that would end Bennett's reign. The clock on the wall read 8:45 a.m. In 15 minutes, Richard Bennett would arrive for what he thought was a routine board meeting. Instead, he would find himself facing the cleaning lady he had ignored and despised, the woman who was about to become his worst nightmare. Marie straightened the folders one last time and smiled. The stage was set. The time for cleaning was over. Now it was time for action. At precisely 9 a.m., Richard Bennett strode into the conference room, his usual arrogant smile frozen on his face as he spotted Marie sitting at the head of the table. He stopped abruptly, causing several executives behind him to stumble. What is the meaning of this? Bennett demanded, his face reddening. Who let the cleaning lady in here? Security. I called this meeting, Mr. Bennett, Marie said calmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms. Please, take your seat. The independent board members were already seated, their expressions carefully neutral. Sandra Chen stood near the door, preventing Bennett's supporters from leaving as they started to back away. This is ridiculous, Bennett sputtered. I don't know what game you're playing, but... My name is Marie Thompson, she interrupted, standing slowly. Daughter of James Thompson, and majority shareholder of Shaw and Mitchell Investments. The color drained from Bennett's face. Behind him, several executives whispered urgently to each other. One of them, Mark Stevens, who had frequently mocked Marie, looked like he might faint. That's impossible, Bennett said, but his voice had lost its confidence. James Thompson never had a daughter. He did. Board member Eleanor Hughes spoke up. And she's been watching you destroy everything he built. Marie opened the folder in front of her. For the past 3 months, I've worked as a cleaning lady in this building. During that time, I've documented numerous instances of discrimination, financial fraud, and criminal behavior under your leadership. She pressed a button on a remote, and the large screen behind her lit up with emails, financial records, and photographs. These emails show you engaged in insider trading. These documents prove you deliberately blocked minority candidates from senior positions. And these recordings demonstrate the toxic culture you've created. Marie played a selection of recordings, executives mocking her, making racist comments, discussing illegal schemes. With each clip, Bennett's face grew paler. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I run this company." "Not anymore," Marie replied. "As majority shareholder, I'm calling for an immediate vote to remove you as CEO. Board members?" One by one, the independent board members raised their hands. Bennett watched helplessly as his power crumbled before him. "This is also for you," Mary said, sliding a document across the table. "A termination letter, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear out your office." As if on cue, 2 security guards entered the room, the same ones who had greeted Marie kindly during her night shifts. They now stood at attention, waiting to escort Bennett out. "You'll regret this," Bennett threatened, but his voice shook. "You have no idea how to run this company." Marie smiled. "I have an MBA from Harvard, 15 years of corporate consulting experience, and most importantly, I have something you never had, integrity." She turned to address the room. "That goes for everyone who participated in discrimination or illegal activities. HR will be conducting reviews of all senior management positions." Several executives quickly left the room, avoiding eye contact. Others remained frozen in their seats, looking shell-shocked. "Meeting adjourned," Marie announced. "Except for you, Mr. Stevens," she added, looking at the executive who had most frequently mocked her. "I believe you spilled some coffee. Would you mind cleaning it up?" She gestured to a small coffee stain on the conference table, one he had made the previous week while joking about her with his colleagues. Red-faced, Stevens grabbed a tissue and wiped up his mess for the first time in his career. As Bennett was escorted out, Sandra approached Marie. "That was incredible," she said quietly. Marie watched as the room slowly emptied, leaving behind a group of stunned executives who had just witnessed their world turn upside down. She thought about all the nights she had cleaned this very room, listening to their cruel jokes and discriminatory comments. "The real work starts now," Mary said, gathering her papers. "It's time to clean up this company, and this time I don't mean the floors." Through the glass walls, she could see employees gathering, whispering about the morning's events. The story of the cleaning lady who fired the CEO was already spreading through the building like wildfire. Change had finally come to Shaw and Mitchell Investments, and it had arrived wearing a cleaning uniform. The hours following Bennett's removal were intense. Marie sat in what was now her office, previously Bennett's, reviewing files with Sandra and the HR director, Patricia Wells. The evidence of systemic discrimination ran deeper than even Marie had initially discovered. "Look at these performance reviews," Patricia said, spreading documents across the desk. Minorities and women were consistently rated lower for the same achievements as their white male counterparts. It affected their bonuses, promotions, everything. Marie nodded grimly. "How many employees do you estimate were impacted?" "At least 300 over the past 5 years, Sandra replied, checking her calculations. "The financial impact on their careers is substantial." As they worked, a knock on the door interrupted them. It was Mark Stevens, the executive who had been forced to clean his own coffee spill earlier. His usual smugness was replaced by visible anxiety. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice unsteady, "I wanted to apologize for my behavior." "Save it," Marie cut him off firmly. "Your apology means nothing without actions behind it. Starting tomorrow, you'll be working with our janitorial staff for 1 month. Perhaps actually doing their job will teach you the respect they deserve." Stevens's face reddened, but he nodded and left quickly. Marie had already decided his long-term fate, but he would learn that lesson later. Throughout the day, Marie met with different department heads. Some were nervous, others relieved that change was finally coming. In the legal department, she found allies who had been documenting their own concerns about Bennett's practices. "We have everything needed to press criminal charges," the head legal counsel explained. "Should we proceed?" Marie considered this carefully. Yes, she decided. Not just against Bennett, but anyone who knowingly participated in the insider trading scheme. No one is above the law. By late afternoon, Marie called an all-company meeting in the main auditorium. Employees filled every seat, tension and excitement thick in the air. The cleaning staff, whom Marie had specially invited, sat in the front row. Standing at the podium, Marie surveyed the crowd. Many of you know me as the cleaning lady who worked the night shift. Today, I stand before you as your new CEO, but more importantly, as someone who has seen this company from every level. She outlined her plans for immediate changes: a complete audit of all hiring and promotion practices, retroactive compensation for employees who had been unfairly evaluated, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind. Starting today, every employee's worth will be measured by their character and contribution, not their color or background, she declared. Those who can't accept this change should start looking for new jobs now. After the meeting, Marie received an unexpected visit from Eleanor Hughes. The board member carried an old photograph showing Marie's father at the company's founding. James would be proud, Eleanor said, handing Marie the photo. But he'd also want you to be prepared. The changes you're making will face resistance from those who benefited from the old system. Marie placed the photo on her desk. Let them resist, she said firmly. I learned something valuable during my time as a cleaning lady. The people who keep this company running aren't the ones in corner offices. They're the ones who show up every day, do their jobs with dignity, and deserve every opportunity to succeed. As evening fell, Marie walked through the office floors one last time. She passed by cubicles where employees were still working, now with renewed purpose. She saw the cleaning staff starting their evening shift, standing taller, treated with new respect by others. In the break room, she found a group of young analysts gathered around Sandra, who was explaining the new mentorship program being implemented. Their faces showed hope and enthusiasm, emotions that had been scarce under Bennett's leadership. Back in her office, Marie reviewed the day's events. She had fired 12 executives who had been complicit in Bennett's schemes, promoted 5 overlooked minority employees to senior positions, and initiated a complete overhaul of company policies. It was just the beginning. Real change would take time, persistence, and courage. But as she looked at her father's photo on the desk, Marie knew she was ready for the challenge. She had spent 3 months cleaning the company's floors. Now it was time to clean up its soul. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Marie allowed herself a small smile. The cleaning lady had done more than just fire the CEO. She had started a revolution. 1 month after Marie Thompson's dramatic takeover, Shaw and Mitchell Investments was a markedly different company. The physical changes were immediately visible. Gone were the stuffy, exclusionary executive dining rooms and segregated break areas. In their place were open collaborative spaces where employees of all levels mingled freely. On this particular morning, Marie sat in her office reviewing the first round of results from her sweeping changes. Sandra Chen, now promoted to Chief Operating Officer, presented the latest figures. Employee satisfaction is up 47%, Sandra reported, flipping through her presentation. And here's something interesting. Productivity has increased by 32% across all departments. Marie nodded, remembering how many talented employees have been held back under Bennett's leadership. What about the compensation adjustments? We processed back pay for 289 employees who were unfairly evaluated, Sandra replied. Some of the stories coming out are heartbreaking. People who were passed over for promotions multiple times despite outstanding performance. Just then, their discussion was interrupted by Marie's assistant. Miss Thompson, Mark Stevens is here for his final review. Stevens entered, looking dramatically different from the arrogant executive he'd been a month ago. His month working with the cleaning staff had left its mark. His designer suit couldn't hide the humility in his bearing. Please, sit down, Mary said, gesturing to a chair. How was your experience this past month? Stevens shifted uncomfortably. Life-changing, he admitted. I never realized how hard the cleaning staff works, how much skill it takes to do their jobs properly. I was wrong about so many things. Marie studied him carefully. Her network of allies throughout the building had kept her informed of Stevens's progress. He had initially approached the assignment with resentment, but something had changed after his second week. Your supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, tells me you've shown real growth, Marie said. She specifically mentioned how you defended a new cleaning staff member when some executives tried to blame her for their mess. Stevens straightened in his chair. It wasn't right. I used to be one of those executives. I'm not proud of who I was. Mary pulled out a folder. That's why I'm offering you a choice. Inside this folder are two documents. One is a severance package. The other is a new position, heading up our newly created Employee Dignity Initiative. The choice is yours. Stevens opened the folder with trembling hands. After reading both documents, he looked up with tears in his eyes. I'd like to take the new position, if you'll trust me with it. Trust must be earned, Marie reminded him, but second chances should be given to those who show true change. After Stevens left, Marie walked through the office floors. She saw minority employees confidently leading meetings, their ideas finally being heard. In the break room, a young black analyst was explaining investment strategies to a group of interested colleagues, something unimaginable under the old regime. The cleaning staff now worked during daylight hours too, their schedule restructured to provide better work-life balance. They wore new uniforms with their names clearly displayed, and employees greeted them by name. Later that afternoon, Marie received an unexpected visit from Eleanor Hughes. The board member carried a newspaper with Shaw and Mitchell featured on the front page of the business section. Former cleaning lady CEO transforms Wall Street firm into model of inclusive excellence. Eleanor, read the headline. You're making waves, Marie. Other companies are starting to feel the pressure to change. Marie smiled, thinking of all the other corporations where discrimination still flourished behind closed doors. Maybe some of them need their own undercover cleaning ladies. As the day drew to a close, Marie found herself back in the conference room where she had confronted Bennett 1 month ago. The room was now being used for a mentorship meeting, where senior employees shared their knowledge with promising junior staff from diverse backgrounds. Sandra joined her at the door. Thinking about that morning? Thinking about how far we've come, Marie replied, and how far we still have to go. Through the glass, they watched as employees collaborated, freed from the fear and discrimination that had once poisoned the company's culture. The transformation wasn't complete. Change never is, but Shaw and Mitchell was becoming what her father had always dreamed it could be, a place where success was determined by merit, not privilege. The cleaning lady who became CEO had done more than just clean house. She had shown that true leadership isn't about power or position. It's about seeing the worth in every person, regardless of their role or background. 1 year after Marie Thompson's takeover of Shaw and Mitchell Investments, the company held its annual shareholders' meeting. The grand auditorium was packed with investors, employees, and media representatives, all eager to hear about the company's remarkable transformation. Marie stood at the podium, looking out at the diverse faces before her. Next to her presentation materials sat her old cleaning uniform, now framed as a reminder of where this journey began. 1 year ago, she began, this company was failing, not just financially, but morally. Today, I'm proud to share our results. The screens behind her lit up with impressive figures. Shaw and Mitchell's profits had increased by 68% under Marie's leadership. Employee retention had reached an all-time high of 94%. The company had become the industry leader in diversity and inclusion, with minorities and women now representing 48% of senior management. In the front row, Sandra Chen smiled proudly. As COO, she had been instrumental in implementing Marie's vision. Beside her sat Mark Stevens, now running the Employee Dignity Initiative, which had become a model program that other companies were rushing to copy. But numbers only tell part of our story, Marie continued. The real success lies in the lives we've changed. She gestured to Mrs. Rodriguez, her former supervisor from the cleaning staff, who now managed facilities operations with a seat on the executive committee. The cleaning staff had been brought in-house as full employees with benefits, stock options, and clear paths for advancement. Eleanor Hughes, still serving on the board, watched with tears in her eyes as Marie shared video testimonials from employees. They spoke about the company's transformation, how fear had been replaced with hope, how talent was now recognized regardless of background, how dignity had been restored to every position. Remember the headlines? Marie asked, displaying news clippings from the past year. Cleaning lady CEO revolutionizes Wall Street, from mopping floors to running board meetings. How one woman's undercover mission changed corporate America. The audience chuckled, but grew serious as Marie continued. Those headlines missed the point. This isn't about a cleaning lady becoming CEO. It's about recognizing that every person, regardless of their job title, deserves respect. It's about understanding that leadership can come from anywhere, and that sometimes the best view of a company comes from the ground up. Marie then unveiled the company's new initiative, a scholarship program named after her father, designed to help underprivileged students pursue business degrees. The first recipient was the daughter of a cleaning staff member who dreamed of becoming a financial analyst. As the meeting concluded, Richard Bennett's name came up one final time. The former CEO had pleaded guilty to multiple charges of fraud and discrimination. His conviction had sent shockwaves through Wall Street, prompting other companies to examine their own practices. After the shareholders dispersed, Marie held a company-wide celebration in the building's atrium. Executives mingled with cleaning staff, sharing stories and laughs. The hierarchical barriers that had once divided them were gone, replaced by mutual respect and understanding. Sandra approached Marie with a small gift, a framed photo taken exactly 1 year ago, showing Marie in her cleaning uniform on her last night of undercover work. To remind us where we started, Sandra said softly. Marie placed the photo next to her father's on her desk, and to remind us to never go back, she added. That evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Marie walked through the office one last time. She passed by conference rooms where diverse teams worked together on major projects. She saw cleaning staff being treated as valued colleagues rather than invisible workers. She witnessed the company her father had dreamed of but never lived to see. A young janitor was mopping the floor near her office. Marie stopped to help him straighten some chairs, much to his surprise. "Miss Thompson, you don't have to do that," he protested. "Actually, I do," she replied with a smile, "because in this company, we all help each other. That's what makes us strong." As she finally prepared to leave for the day, Marie paused at her office window. The city lights were coming on, just as they had 1 year ago when she was planning her takeover. But now, instead of cleaning floors in silence, she was leading a company that had become a beacon of change in corporate America. The cleaning lady who became CEO had done more than just clean up a company. She had shown the world that true power lies not in titles or positions, but in the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter where you start from.